Welcome to Birding with Lois. My name is Lois Richter, and I am one of a team of people who've put together this show. I get to be the host, which is a cool thing to do. I have done lots of radio shows and lots of birding trips, but this, putting it all together into a video, it's fairly new. We just started in April of 2022. But today I have with me a guest who I've had on my radio show, many, many times. And she is a local birder here in town. She leads birding trips and she teaches classes. And I've asked her to come and talk to us today about what it's like to teach a beginning birding class. So if I may introduce to you my friend, Mary Schiedt. Hello, Mary.
Hi.
And is this your first time being on a television show?
It is.
Yes, I thought so. So she's really good with radio, but we'll see how this goes. Okay, So let's start with who are you, where are you from, and how do I know you? But we don't have to get into the election stuff. How do I know you about birds?
Yeah, I'm originally from Michigan, but when I was 4 years old, we moved to California and we started with camping and then backpacking and things like that. Although in Michigan, in our backyard was the Tittabawassee River. So when my dad got home from work, we'd go walking down to the river and get all sorts of things to put in my pockets and learn about nature. So I love sharing anything about nature. I do work for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife at a wildlife area. Get lots of chances to share. I don't very often teach formal classes, but I do really like to teach on a peripatetic basis.
Oh, what a pathetic, what?
Peripatetic.
What's that word?
Walking around.
That's what it means?
Things, and then taking the information from that or having people ask questions when they see something. And just that way you're connecting up with what their interests are, and it's rather dynamic.
That sounds really good. Okay, so we have talked about birds in our area, and we both live in Davis, California, or near Davis, California. But this time, this show is going out to everybody. So we're going to be using examples from our area, but the general discussion will be something that you can use no matter where you live. So let's get started. So Mary, if you were going to, let's first start with, when did you first teach your beginning birding class or walk and talk or whatever you call it?
The first time I formally did that, it was when the Yolo Basin Foundation had a Duck Days festival. And they wanted me to teach a birding for beginners. So I called it a birding for absolute beginners. And the first thing I said was, here's a picture of a duck and a hummingbird and a robin. Can you tell the difference? You're not a beginner anymore.
And there they are.
Feel comfortable with learning new things and not feeling embarrassed about if they aren't sure. So that was the first formal thing. Then I went to just doing that as a trip. So there we have a mallard and a decoy, and we have a hummingbird, and we have a scrub jay.
What do you mean a decoy? That's a female mallard.
Oh, she is. She was sitting so still, I didn't believe it. Oh, that's right, because she's in a picture. Yes, but often decoys are very well painted. He was definitely a very good mallard with a pin curl for a tail. You could see his little pin curl there.
And the hummingbird is so small in comparison to these other things that it's like, are you sure that's a bird?
It's a bird that can fly backwards.
Backwards?
Yes.
What?
Put out your hummingbird feeder and you'll go see them come zooping in.
Yeah.
And flying backwards.
Well, I see them hover all the time. I guess if they can hover, they should be able to fly backwards, huh?
Yes, they're very good at it. And some of the different kinds of hummingbirds have different courtships that are very spectacular. So if you have a place that has good feeders and it's breeding season, you might see the males doing really big acrobatic things and then making a funny sound at the bottom.
I haven't seen, but I've heard it. I've been out in the backyard and there's this I don't even know what the sound is, but it just it makes a sound, and I'm going, what? And I looked around, and sure enough, there was a female on one of those branches, and he was showing off for her. Do you know which hummingbird it is that does the J?
I don't remember. I was thinking of that, and I can't remember which of them is the J.
And we don't mean scrub J, we mean the letter J, like they come down like that.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I actually have I have a book all about hummingbirds. So that's one of the things to tell people is that if you think of something like this or you wonder about something like this, there's a lot of resources out there that you can get to do that. So Mary said that she goes in small groups. So here is a small group. This happened to be a group that was my brother, myself, his wife, and a couple other people. And Mary came and she did a tour for us. And those are ducks. No, they're not. What are those? Those are geese.
Those are geese, and they're probably snow geese.
They are.
But there could also be some smaller ones that are more of a duck shape that are Ross's geese. And they can fly in the same flocks.
Okay. Alrighty, So in case y'all are wondering what's going on here, I've got this new thing on the computer, and I've got slides, and it alternates between slide and picture, so it's all the same frame, and I just have to, so if I ever start going, what? It's probably because having trouble with my computer. Okay, continuing our talk. So you said you started with duck days and you were absolute beginners, and now you're not an absolute beginner anymore. How long have you been doing those duck day trips?
I think from just about the first time that they had duck days, and the Yolo Basin Foundation started doing those around 25 years ago.
Would you tell us what duck days is?
It's a festival for families, emphasizing what is at the Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area, which started out with 4,500 acres and is now at 17,000 acres. But they also have education programs. And right now they're having a summer camp for 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. So they're doing all kinds of things. We also have a huge bat colony out there, and we do bat tours for the Mexican free-tailed bats. So those aren't birds.
Those aren't birds. They got wings, but they're not birds.
Sometimes there's peregrine falcons after them.
Oh. Okay. So when we did a preview of this show yesterday just to see what Myra was going to say, and I could try and get some pictures so what she was talking about. So when you have this little group at Duck Days or wherever it is, and you meet up and you go out and you start looking around, what are you going to find?
We choose usually one good habitat that is next to another good habitat, so we can have at least 2 habitats in our little jaunt. And then we can show what is happening up in the trees, out on the water, on the ground underneath the trees.
And here's a picture of the ground. Can you see them?
I can't see them really clearly.
Maybe the crew can make that big. There you go. That's better.
Okay. Yeah. So there's some sparrows that we have in winter that will be leaving us fairly soon to go up into the mountains for their breeding. But they're here all winter looking for seeds and insects on the ground. And they will actually find your garden and scratch out all the seeds that you planted in the fall.
They get the weed seeds.
It's nice to share.
Yeah.
It's nice to share.
The one on the lower left is a golden crown sparrow. Is that correct?
That's what it's looking like to me. Mhm.
And in that same picture up on the top of the left, I think that's also nope, that's a different bird, isn't it? What is that? I don't know what that is. Okay. The one on the far left in the little inset, that is a house sparrow. The top left is supposed to be a fox sparrow, but it looks kind of odd.
It could be a fox sparrow. There's so many different color forms of fox sparrows. And they're a little bit more chunky sparrow than some of the others. And they also will scratch with both feet simultaneously. In other words, they give a little jump and pull their feet back. And so they're just hopping in place and stirring up the vegetation, the leaf litter and things, and looking for bugs. And so I call that the towhee shuffle, because towhees do the same sort of thing. Both feet.
And here
at
are
once.
the towhees.
Yes. That's what out west is called a spotted towhee. It was split off from the rufous-sided towhees that everybody was calling for all of them. The eastern ones are now called a rufous-sided towhee, I think. And then ours became called the spotted towhee. They have a lot more spots on the back.
And the brown one?
Brown one.
It's a California towhee.
Oh yeah. Okay. I can see underneath the rump on this is a very orangey area of feathers underneath the where the tail is attached. Yeah. And I wasn't seeing the shape of the bill at first. Yes, that's a California towhee.
And then this is a fox sparrow doing that towhee shuffle. With the little leaf.
Yes, it has a fairly substantial beak, and it holds its tails almost straight out. And it often has a lot of streaking on the breast. And then there's some forms that are almost a mahogany color, some are reddish, and then some are very sooty. So we have various colorations, and some of those are different subspecies.
Okay. So when you're looking around and you go and you look under a bush and you find a bird, then what do you do? What do you do for your tour, for your class, for your trip?
First thing is make sure everybody gets a chance to see it. You know, because sometimes somebody isn't looking in the right place, and you can point to where it is, get them standing in front of you or just behind you. So you give them the experience of actually seeing it, not just hearing you talk about it.
And do you use binoculars?
I always have my binoculars with me, and if they own binoculars, I encourage them to bring them. If they don't, sometimes we have extra ones to loan them. And if in that case, at the beginning of the trip, I tell them how to adjust them to their face, how far apart your eyes are different. My eyes are very close together. So I always use the kind of binoculars that have the dog leg shape. So it gives me better depth perception than the ones that are straight columns. But if people, whatever kind they have to get them arranged the right distance apart for their eyes and learn where to turn the focus to make it come in. And some people catch on to it right away, and a lot of people have used a pair somewhere along the line.
And on our show, on Birding with Lois, on our premiere show, which was the 7th of April, we actually did a segment on binoculars, how to use them and how to choose them. So how to pick your binoculars. And the key takeaway that most people got from that whole thing was something that I learned from Mary years ago, and that is you look at the bird and then you put your binoculars up to your eyes so you don't lose where the bird is. Yeah.
Yep. If you're putting the binoculars in front of your eyes and then searching all over, that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
But find it with your eyes, and then bring your binoculars up in between the bird and your eyes, and it's perfect.
Good. Okay, so one of the things, and now when we talked before, you talked about knowing what birds you're planning to see, and I got out this some checklists. And so there is a Yolo Audubon Society, that's our county, and we have a birdathon checklist, and it's much longer than that. I just put a little bit in. And then I made, for when I was doing my beginner talks in the winter, I made a checklist for there. And so those are just really the commonest birds, not a lot of other stuff. Then we have eBird. And that's a fun one because you can find out what's where and when it's been there and how many people saw it and where they saw it and all sorts of stuff. So I will encourage people to go to eBird. Okay, so if you are out there and you're beginning birding and you're walking around, and how do you do it? How do you do it?
Basically, I just am looking for things that are in trees, that are below trees, that are out onto water or fences. If there's a fence around, a lot of things will be up there, seeing where they're going to go next. And that gives a really good chance to see different, like a side view and a front view and a back view as they're looking around themselves for what they're going to do next. And then I also have other people looking out too. If you see something, point it out, and then we'll figure out what it is. So they get to actually direct our attention to something that they have seen.
So, for example, what might some kids see?
A kid might see a little bright yellow on a bird, especially in the winter, which has some yellow on the sides, and it is quite small, and it pops around quite a bit. And then I said, oh, that is a yellow-rumped warbler. And look, even the babies have a yellow rump, yellow on the top above the tail, and they have some yellow on the sides. And then when it gets to be breeding season, they get really brilliant.
Of course, they've gone by then.
Well, if you go up to the mountains, then you get to see them again.
Okay. When we were talking yesterday, and I said, what might a kid see? You said maybe they might see a bird flopping around in the dirt. So I got a picture of one flopping around in the dirt. What is this? This dust bath. What is it? Why are they doing that?
It's the same sort of thing that they would be doing with a water bath. They're trying to clean up their feathers, but it works even better with dust if they have something like feather mites, which are itchy and irritating and might be biting them. So the dry dust, they can rub it around. But a lot of birds will also take an actual bath in your water fountain or a shallow water. And the hummingbirds will do it with wet leaves.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
They're so small. They're so tiny.
Yeah. Well, they don't have much spaces between the feathers either, so maybe wet leaves is the best way to go.
You were saying that if there's something that you don't know, you can look it up in a book. And I have this picture here. Did I get the right picture? Is
Yes,
this
you
the right
did.
book?
That is a wonderful resource book. It's quite large. It's probably about 1.5 inches thick. It has 3 authors. The first one is Paul Ehrlich of population studies fame, and then David Dobkin and Darrell Hoy. It is crammed full of information and interesting short little essays about various subjects. Just the right kind of thing to have beside your bed. So you don't get into a whole long chapter of something, but you're going to pick up something and 1/3 of a page or a half a page. I think the most is about 2 pages on a subject. All kinds of interesting things that people have researched. And there's references. And then on the main left-hand page are all the birds that breed in North America with information about what kind of trees they would, or place they would nest, what kind of nest they make, who makes the nest, how many eggs is average in the range, whether they're was it monogamous, or whether they are rather mess around a lot. And there are a lot of birds that will actually be mostly monogamous and then have a little bit of
Extracurricular activity.
Yes, extracurricular, yes.
And this is a picture of the eggs and the nest of a mallard. Mm-hmm. So
That, you see, that's a lot of young to be producing eggs for. Mm-hmm. The term precocial refers to young that are already to be on swim and go with the parent various places. They have their eyes open. They have enough feathers on them to stay warm. And all of the waterfowl are precocial, and a lot of other birds are too. Quail, killdeer, things like that. And
killdeer
as soon as they come out of the egg, they dry off, and then they follow the parent and are shown what food it is, and then saved from danger. Whereas the other kind is altricial, which means they're hatched blind, naked. When the shadow of the parent comes at the side of the nest, their mouth flings open and is stuffed full of food. And then the parent goes off and gets some more, and hopefully the next one gets some of that food, not just the one. But those take a while before the eyes start to open and they start getting enough feathers that the flight feathers will start to come in and they can follow the parents and still be fed. So precocial are the ones that just can follow the parents. And they like quail and pheasants and ducks.
Now I know what precocious comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When you were talking yesterday, you're saying that you hope that the people in your walk and talk will see something that you can then explain, like the dust
mm-hmm.
bath or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, sometimes it's nice when they see courting
mm-hmm.
for the various things. So
mm-hmm.
I went looking for courting. So you do not want to see the courting that mallards do. It's not fun.
Oh,
not fun at all. But I did find this one. Look what I found. I found this one. Let's talk about this one. This is a good one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that looks like a loon.
It is. It's a loon.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Pacific Coast loon, or mm-hmm. Pacific loon.
Pacific loon. Uh-huh.
And so they do this. They throw their head back. They flap their wings. They get real excited, and that's courting.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want to talk about mallards.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something else.
I do want to talk about mallards,
Mary.
because
it's so sad, though.
No, you're talking about park ducks.
Yeah.
Wild mallards don't behave like that.
Oh, really?
The ones you see at ponds and things in the cities where everybody's feeding them bread crusts and things like that.
Junk food, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of those have actually crossed with domestic ducks, and they have big white patches here and there. Their behavior is that terrible. Sometimes the females are actually drowned from being held under too long, things like that. But the wild mallards, there's usually a pair and a spare. So there's one
two males and a female?
And two males following her. And the second one, he kind of helps guard the area, but sometimes he gets a little action too. But those are very different from the park mallards. So I think if you have a chance to watch them on a place that's not near a city, you'll see some interesting just behaviors that are much, much more civilized.
Yeah.
Where they're not in the civilized area, they're more civilized.
The ducks are more civilized, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about one of the most beautiful ducks I've ever seen in my life. And it's here. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm talking about? It's that one.
Mm-hmm. Yes. This is wood duck. And it's two wood ducks. It's the male wood duck on the upper picture, reflected.
Yeah.
And then the female is very, very plain but with eye makeup. And they nest in cavities. And when they fly, they sound like their wings need oiling. So here are some natural cavities and some human-created places that they can use as a nest box, and they do really well that way.
So the trees that have holes in them, are those ducks actually making those holes? Because they don't have a pecking beak.
No, they don't. If there's a certain, sometimes if a certain kind of branch falls off, the rot that is behind it lets it kind of the interior get more broken down into a cavity. A pileated woodpecker would make a big enough hole for a wood duck, but they need a little bit of depth in there too. So she will have some eggs down there, and she will pull some feathers off her breast to help be warm and protected. And then she has to incubate on that for a number of days, quite a long time. And then they all hatch at the same time, because she had to make it synchronous. The precocials all have to hatch at the same time, or you'd have to keep going back for that other little baby that, whether it was a quail baby or a pheasant baby, the eggs get laid separately, maybe one per day, and then she doesn't really warm them until she's all done. Then she keeps them warm. On the same day they hatch, and these little baby wood ducks have sharp toenails, and they climb up on the inside of that cavity of the tree or that nest box. They put some little extra scratches to give them some traction, and dump out, fall as much as 50 feet, and bounce, and then the mom takes them to the water, and they follow her from there. And she watches out for their safety and stuff. So they put those pretty high up in a tree, because the babies are really good at bouncing.
So I went back to the picture where he's got a lovely reflection because he's lovely, and she doesn't have a reflection because it's filled up with ducklings. And there's a whole bunch of them. There's 12 ducklings in there. Isn't that a lot of ducklings, or is that normal?
And actually there's another phenomenon that happens, that if nests are too close together, sometimes people put up a lot of wood duck boxes. Some females will egg dump. They'll lay eggs in somebody else's nest. And then you end up with too many. If there's way too many, she can't get them warm enough to actually hatch. Then it's all a loss. But if she can keep the top 10 or 12 warm enough to go finish their development, they get a really strong muscle on the back of their neck and a little sharp egg tooth on the top of their bill. And as they are in there, they start whacking backward with their head, and that makes that little circular, so the whole top of the shell can come off.
Wow.
And then that little egg tooth goes away, and their big, strong neck muscle, it kind of doesn't stick around. But that's how all birds come out of the egg. So if you start raising chickens, a chicken, when it's pippin', that's when it's got that egg tooth, and it's trying to make that circular scar for the egg to fall open, and then it can get its feathers dry and follow its mom.
Wow. Okay. So we were talking about using binoculars, but what about a scope? Is that something that a beginner birder needs to have, or not?
You don't need to have it. It's heavy sometimes to carry. If you're with a group, you can usually find somebody to share the carrying of it. And then you set up the tripod so that it's very steady. And then you can usually rotate them around and change the angles and stuff to stay on something to show people over and over the details. If you are all by yourself, you might not want to carry a scope, because then you're juggling both you can have the binoculars hanging around your neck.
Yeah. And this picture, by the way, is that's Mary, and that's my husband, Jim. And I don't know who's actually on the scope. It was somebody else who was on our trip with us. But yeah, so there we are, using a scope, using binoculars.
Yeah, most trips that the Yolo Basin Foundation does, they will have at least one scope handy, and they put it down low so that the kids can reach it without having to be on tiptoes, because then they might fall. And everybody else can kind of bend down a bit more, accommodate it.
So if you were to see this, see, I did listen to what we did yesterday. What would you be telling the children in the group?
This oval thing with a hole in the side was made by a marsh wren male who had to weave all of that without using hands, because he doesn't have hands. He would get all of these things, weave them together as a hollow, large egg-shaped thing, and then he tries to get the female to like the lace he made for her. And then if she accepts it, then she'll put some soft stuff on the inside, and they will become a pair, and she will have eggs inside there until they're ready to hatch and come out and join bird life.
Okay, so there again is, as Mary's saying, just do your walk and talk. When people see something, explain it. And if you don't know the explanation, say, ooh, that's really cool. What can we figure out about that? And then maybe they'll figure it out, or maybe you'll have a book, or maybe you'll look it up on eBird or something.
Yeah. Well, almost every time you go out, walk on the walk type teaching, people will find a feather and wonder what it's from. So I talk about the four main kinds of feathers and what we can tell from that. Like the wings have some very strong feathers on the outer parts. There's either 9 or 10 what they call primaries. And they have a shaft that runs down, but it doesn't run down right down the middle. It runs close to one edge, and that is the leading edge of that feather. And so it is inserted into the skin up on the skin of the wing over the bones. And then the one next to it would be a little bit shorter, or in some cases the same for the first two feathers. And then as it gets down toward the body of the bird, toward on the wing, that shaft is more close to the middle, but it's still a strong feather that's little hooks hold it together. So it's really not a fuzzy kind of feather, except at the base just a little bit. Then the next half of the wing are what's called secondaries, which are a little bit, they're also curved in 2 dimensions, but their feathers, their vein down the middle is not exactly down the middle, but becomes closer and closer to the middle as it gets close to the body. Those make the kind of contours you see on an old-fashioned airplane wing. It's got some curve to it, and that gives more lift than if it were just absolutely flat. So if they find a feather and it's got a vein through it, and it's all nicely knit together, and the vein is near one edge, that's a primary that really helps it fly well. The next part helps it fly, but it's just part of the wing. But the tail feathers, the vein goes straight down the middle of it, and it doesn't bend. It's a flat thing. So if they pick one up like that brown one there, that one is a tail feather. The vein is going down the middle, and it is also very straight in the other dimension too. It doesn't have a downward curve.
I noticed there are different colors on different parts of birds, and are all the colors as strong as other colors, or is brown a stronger feather than a yellow?
Black is the strongest, and that is why the swans and pelicans have black on the outer part of the wing, because that has to be really strong for those big birds to do long, long flights. And so those that are long distance migrants tend to have dark on the outer parts of the wings, so it stays strong.
Mm-hmm. So we have a number of white egrets, and then there's that big blue thing. And will you tell us about that? Let me show you that big blue thing.
Yes. This one is a great blue heron, and it has a very long neck. It has quite a few subtle colors on it, some purplish maroonish color, sometimes a little yellower near the eye and so forth. And they are wading birds. They nest high in trees. Now, the egrets and herons have good back toes, so they can actually stand on a branch. Okay, so here we have on the left a great egret, and he's standing pretty deep in water because you can see that it's disappearing into the water and showing up again on the reflection. And those are quite big, and they're very patient hunters. What they will do is they'll be getting to a good spot, and they will see something, and they will take sometimes half an hour slowly pulling their head back, almost like a snake getting ready to strike. And at the right moment, they strike and they get it. And then they have to toss it around and make sure it's lined up right to go to swallow it. Now, the other white egret that you were showing there is a snowy egret. And it's only knee-high, has a delicate little black bill, and it has a whole different style of hunting. You see it has bright yellow feet. Once it's an adult, it has bright yellow feet, and it uses them as fishing lures. So it will step forward with one foot and wiggle that foot, and if something comes to it, it grabs it. And then it steps forward again, wiggle, wiggle, grab, wiggle, wiggle, grab, wiggle, wiggle, grab. And it's fascinating to see how often they actually get something, and then they'll swing their head back to kind of swallow it smoothly. Mm-hmm. And then the third one you're showing is not a native here, but it's a cattle egret. And that one is from, yes.
And that's in Yolo County.
Yes. They probably originally came across on a ship, got to like Central America, and slowly they increased their range. And so they can actually pick bugs and things off the cattle's back, or they can also get picked out of the grasses when the cattle are disturbing things. In the breeding season, they have kind of a caramel colored head, just kind of pretty. But they're fascinating, but you don't see a lot of them.
This is a comparison of the great egret and a snowy egret. Now, the snowy, it's sloped. So the snowy egret is in short water, and you can see the great egret is past the knees in bigger water. And then here is one showing the relative size of a great blue heron and I think that's a snowy egret. Oh, maybe.
Yes, I see
something else.
Yeah, because I see the black bill.
Yeah.
You just can't see the yellow feet because it's still in water.
And I don't know where it is, but that's a shark.
Ooh.
Yeah. It's a California picture, because when I went and looked for pictures, I said, only in California.
Yeah, you find a lot of egrets right at the coast in some of the shallow waters where they aren't going to be hit by big waves or anything, but that where other things are using the shallow waters and sometimes become dinner.
Well, if you're on a trip here in Davis, Yolo County, any place in the Central Valley, you're going to see that bird that has blue on it, and it's a jay, and the people who move here call them blue jays, but they're not blue jays. You want to tell me about that bird? She told me something I didn't know. So tell me about that bird.
Well, if you don't capitalize it, it is a blue jay that you have back east. But a blue jay with capital letters is like this. It has.
No, this is a scrub jay.
This is a western scrub jay, now called the California scrub jay. And that acorn is going to be planted by it. And all of the oak forests that we have, some sort of jay is usually the one that is planting the acorns that keep it a thriving forest. There's other things that will save the acorns, like squirrels and so forth, but they don't do a good job of finding and pointing, stick them in the ground, point down, and remembering where they were and that sort of thing. So, the various kinds of jays, the Steller's jay, which has a crest, there's those both in the Coast Range and in the Sierras. They used to be called camp robbers a lot because if you've left anything out on your picnic table, it's found it.
So describe this California scrub jay.
Okay, the main colors you notice are the strong, rich blue. It's fairly, and blue is not a pigment. On birds, blue is an interference color. And the structure of the proteins in the feather make it be blue appearance. They'll have a little white eyebrow. The dark patch on the right-hand one, I think, is an older bird than the one on the left, which may be a young one. It has that pale gray on the back.
Okay. Our other extraordinary bird that is a California specialty. You know what I'm coming up to now, don't you?
Yes, indeed.
Here you go.
Yes. Now, this one is only in California and a little bit beyond. The rest of the United States, you have black-billed magpies. They're a little bit bigger. They're the same kind of body colors, black and white, but some iridescence on the wings and tail that can flash sometimes for you. This is an adult yellow-billed magpie because there's just a little yellow around the eye, and then the bill itself is yellow. When they're young, they have a much more yellow, and that may help the parents remember that, hey, yeah, this is my baby, I better feed it some more. Because the babies will be begging anyway.
Here are the two small pictures are yellow and black for around the eyes. Mm-hmm. Now, if I can make this one bigger, let me see if I can make that bit bigger. And if you look at this bird, at where the beak ends and the yellow around the eye begins, there's more beak than there is on an adult bird. What's with that?
A lot of baby birds have an awful lot of gape. In fact,
A lot of what?
Gape, G-A-P-E. When a baby bird is needing to be fed, they have a stretchy material at the inside, at the edges of the joint where the upper and lower meet. And that lets them really open for large food and for the parent to not have, even if they don't have good, if your parent doesn't have good aim, you still get the food. But anyway, as they start to mature a little bit, that will resorb. So you don't have that on adult birds, except I have found when bird banding that occasionally a female who has been on the nest will have some because she might be being fed by a mate. And so that's the only time I've seen that. And I've asked other people who are bird banders, and they think that's probably why she temporarily has that little stretch marks on the side of her bill, because she is opening up for some good food while she's having to still be on the nest. But yeah, that baby bird, that yellow is skin where it's beyond the edge of the bill. And that will fill in with feathers as it gets older and more independent.
Okay. Well, if you were walking around and you were showing people what's here, what would be some common birds that you might find in my neighborhood in the summertime? We won't go with the winter visitor because we have so many more birds in the winter than in the summer. But give me a couple of examples.
Well, of course, a couple of kinds of hummingbirds. Mm-hmm. You could have Bullock's oriole.
Now, wait. You said hummingbirds. I haven't even got the picture up yet.
Oh, sorry.
I don't have a picture of that. Okay. You didn't mention Bullock's oriole yesterday.
You said your neighborhood, and so I know that you and neighbors have hummingbird feeders.
Yes.
And sometimes people will put half oranges and stuff on fences for things like the orioles. Mm-hmm. You can have the Bullock's oriole or sometimes a hooded oriole. Mm-hmm. And then...
How about the commonest common ones?
How about the house finch?
All right, there we go. I got a picture of house finch.
Okay.
He and she.
Mm-hmm. And everybody should know that if it's really plain, it's the she. Mm-hmm. And the male usually she will sometimes have a little bit of that reddish on her rump, but not very much, where he has a lot more on his breast, his head, and his rump. Yes, he's got to be the one to be the
he's showing off for lots of ladies. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
See, this is not one of those monogamous fellows.
And even some that are thought to be monogamous are sometimes a little bit dumb. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, and give me another one.
Okay. Well, some people are really upset when they get one of the things that you can have. But yes, that is a Cooper's hawk. It's one of the accipiters, which are really fast-flying woodland birds. They have relatively short wings and a long tail to be able to scoot between branches and pick off a bird, either from a that's perched on a branch or on your feeder. And so they tend to have a blackish cap area and almost a little flat look to it. And then their tail ends in a kind of a rounded end, which my mnemonic for that was Cooper starts with a C, and the bottom of the tail is like a C.
Okay, what else we got coming?
We would have robins some of the time.
You didn't say robins. I didn't get a picture here. I'll put up the picture, then you can tell me what it was.
Yeah, that's better because I'm trying to remember which we actually did. Okay, so on the left is a house sparrow, which has a lot of rich rusty colors on the top, lighter colored underneath, and the bill tends to be a pretty sooty color. And they're originally from Europe, but they adapt well around people. And they are also a lot around barns. If you have a place that has a barn out back, the house sparrows really like to hang out there.
And that's a she, right? The one on the right side?
That's a she on the right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. It's good. Just making sure that I didn't get the wrong pictures. Okay, how about this one?
Oh, yes. These are mourning doves, M-O-U-R. Probably because
they sound so sad.
They have a long tail. They have a fairly small head, and are not the brightest, the sharpest.
We call them pinheads. What can you say?
Yes. However, they are very successful because they can do 2 or 3 batches of young each year. They can fly very fast. They're almost like a rocket dove. And so the males will tend to get more and more of a bluish cast on the upper wings, and the female will get more of a rosy color on the breast as they get older. And they have spots that develop on the sides a bit.
Let's try this one. I know that this one not only hangs around it used to be in the creek that I would see it, but now I see it on people's houses because we've stopped spraying those poisons. And so we have lots of little tiny flies. And this is a flycatcher of some sort.
And when people ask me, what's your favorite bird? This is sometimes the one I mention. It is the black Phoebe. It's all sooty, dark gray and black, as if it had been dipped upside down in ink and the rest was left white. But they have a bit of a crest, and most birds that have a little bit of a crest have a bit of an attitude too. But as a flycatcher, it will be perched on a stick or a branch or something, see an insect, and it has bristles right next to its bill. So as it gets close, it opens its mouth, and that helps shovel the insect far enough into the mouth that they're not going to miss it. And then they go back to their spot and eat.
Cool.
And they'll go, so it's really nice for photography because they'll come back to the same place over and over and over.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think that this has been wonderful. And I'm wondering if you would mind if we took a couple of questions that we have. And Alan, can you put up that first question for us? I'm going to see if I can find the spot where I have to go to read it. Well, it's one of those things where I have too many windows open. And I do not know where I am. Okay. I just lost myself. Hold on. I'm back. Okay. I can't quite read what that says. Let me see if I can pin that.
It says, can I see birds at night? How and where?
Well, I don't know if you're going to answer that or not, but I got a picture to put up just in case this was your answer. Hold on. I have to go over there and click that button.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is that if it's in the middle of the night, I'm not going to see anything. But these birds come out at dusk, and then they stay. But
if you're in a neighborhood, the one on the left and the one on the right and the one at the top are all barn owls. And the females tend to stay darker. Often females are less noticeable so that they can be protective on the nest. But the males get whiter and whiter, almost like a ghost. And so if there's even starlight, sometimes you'll see them. Now, a lot of times people will tell me they have a screech owl at their place. And where do they live? And they're in the middle of town. Well, the screech owls,
that's a barn owl.
So when they hear that funny sound, they think that's a screech owl, which is quite a different sound. But barn owls in town, there's usually enough light from street lights, sometimes moonlight and starlight, that especially the males, which are paler, you can see. And you can know that they're eating the rats out of your ivy.
Okay. So I guess to answer her question is, first you hear them, and then you look real hard to see if you can find them. Yeah. Let's do the next question. And I think, Mary, your eyes are younger than mine. Why don't you read that for us, please?
So this spring I saw a small bright yellow bird with a spot of black on the very top of its head. It was in a bush outside my window. What could it be? A Wilson's warbler. Yes, and there's a picture of a Wilson's warbler. And in some parts of the United States, Wilson's warblers, only the males have a black cap. In California, the females can have a black cap as well, but it's usually when you're a bird bander, you actually measure the length of that, and it's shorter in a female than a male. And we're also blowing in other parts of the body to see what they are.
Great. And I think we have one last question, and we're just about right on time. That's great. So next question, please.
Can road-runner birds fly? Yes, they can. They don't like to do long flights. They're better they're really good at running. They're really good at where there's a sloped tree going way up to the top. But they can fly quite a ways. But they would prefer to go work their way up to the top and then glide down. But they can fly when they.
So they fly short distances and low elevations.
Mm-hmm. And I would guess that if they were moving quite a ways to a new location, they would do it in shorter steps than some migrant birds would do.
And they'd rather run.
Yes.
And they've got attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I would like to, in the last couple of minutes that we have, thank Mary for being here and then show you how you can find these pictures. You've seen me do pictures here, and I want to show you how to do that. Let me switch from there to there. And so, there we go. All right, so I have here, let's see if I can get to it. So I have here a picture, and this is a picture of a nest. Obviously, I was looking for things. It's a California scrub jay nest. And I am in a site called Macaulay Library. And it is open to the public. You can go in and you can find these things. So in your Macaulay Library, you click search, you come down here. I'm going to look for, what am I going to look for, Mary? Something, I'll look for an American crow.
Okay.
Okay, so I type in American crow, and you'll notice that there's a whole bunch of different things. There's an American fish crow, there's a black-crowned night heron, American, and the crow part is from crowned. But this is the one I'm interested. So when you search the one you want, you click on it, and then what's going to happen is it's going to show you all these things. And now, if I had no filters at all, crow. No, I have to say American crow. There are so many things that have, what did I do wrong? American crow. There we go. There are 78,000 photographs. 5,000 plus sound recordings, 172 videos. Well, I'm going to limit this. I just want photographs. Thank you very much. We'll go with stills. And then I want only things that are here in California, because sometimes things are different in other places. I don't care about the date or who did it. More filters. I can say all these different things. If I know something about it, that there's something particular I wanted, then I would go like nest or something like that. And then, where do I cancel that? Then the last thing over on the, and people don't usually see this, but over here on the edge, I hope you can see that, I can choose to do it in the order, catalog number, all the stuff, recently uploaded, so I can see the newest stuff, and best quality. And I always go for best quality because, if I'm going to look at pictures, I want to look at the best pictures there are. So here we are. Here's a bunch of, these are all crows, even though that's a white one, it's still a crow. Oh, there aren't many pictures. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. More. And so you can just keep going down and down and down until you run out of things. So I'm going to say, let's look at this picture. I click on the picture, it opens up. Now, I am just showing you the middle part. If I were to, let's see, can I? I don't think I can do that. Yes, I can do that. So, you're seeing now, I've shrunk the window so that you can see more of it. And over here it tells us what who took the picture, when they took it, all that stuff. On the right-hand side, they have the ratings of how good a picture it is, reported if something's wrong with it, and it came from a particular checklist. So if you wanted to see all the birds that were seen that day at that time, you could do that. When I click on the one that says what kind of a thing, American crow, now we're going to go away from the Macaulay Library, and we're going to go to the Cornell ornithology site, and you get so much more information. Okay, well, that's all. We don't have time to go into that anymore. If we did, I would show you even more things. Maybe I'll do that in another show. But for right now, put up Mary and I together. Thank you, Mary, for being here. I really appreciate your joining me today. Thank you, listeners, for being here. Thank you, the folks who support us. I didn't even get a crew list. I'm so sorry for you, but thank you for the back end because they're doing a great job.
And the tech was really an interesting adventure because I have never had this experience before.
Okay, so I think that's it. Fade to black or fade to bird with Lois, or I'll put something up, whatever. Bye.